The HOA president called the cops to arrest me for fishing on my own dock. The cruiser doors popped. She lifted her chin like she finally had me boxed in, and I set my coffee down because I knew something she didn't. That little utility shed over my shoulder is leased to the state police, and by the end of that week, her gavel wouldn't be in her hand anymore. My name is Cole Harper. I'm not loud or fancy. I work with my hands. I keep receipts, and I bought a cedar cabin on Silver Pine Lake outside Ash Ridge, Pennsylvania, because sunrise on quiet water is good medicine. You know what I mean. Coffee in my left hand, reel in my right. Wood smoke, tucked into the rafters. Everything. Calm, until Birch Hollow HOA decided calm was a problem they needed to manage. The first knock came at 6 on the dot. 3 sharp taps like a metronome. And there she was. Linda. Carmichael. Blazer, pressed binder laminated red pen, already uncapped. "Unapproved shade on your dock rails," she said, pointing at a color grid maple. "Mist, not cedar. Ember, $500 fine due Friday." And I'm standing there in socks thinking we are really doing this over the color of wood. I did not sign. I said I'd review the charter and check county records because my parcel sits beyond their shoreline map, and I have a recorded survey with pins in the ground. She smiled a smile that says, "I hear you, but I don't. Don't try to lawyer me." "Mr. Harper, we govern all usage on the lake." She pivoted and marched off like the verdict was already printed. I pulled my deed folder from the safe Meaties and Bounds parcel ID survey, with stakes marching from my fence line to the poplar called the county clerk, to confirm the record was clean, and Joanna Pierce, steady voice, patient cadence, said, "Yes, boundaries unchanged. No HOA encumbrance on file." So I told myself it would be a cranky meeting, maybe some eye rolls, and then life would go back to bait and coffee. Next morning on the dock, the sun was a thin coin sliding up the tree-line line, spooling Sweet Heron, gliding the far cove. Gravel crackled, and 2 cruisers slid in. Like a movie, doors opened. Officer Nate Collins gave me the look of a man. Told a story that doesn't add up, Sergeant Raoul. Ortega took the long angle, and behind them, Linda stood with a manila folder thick as a church hymnal chin, tilted full of victory. Before the whistle blew. "He's been trespassing and fishing in a restricted area," she announced, waving a hand. Drawn map, streaked with highlighter, like a treasure hunt. I have photos, timestamps, witnesses, and I kept my voice even. "Officers, my deed and survey are inside the property. Line is pinned. This dock sits on my side. There is no HOA easement here." Collins studied the paper. Ortega walked my fence and paused at each pin, then looked toward the outbuilding by the trees, a tiny tick in his cheek, like he recognized more than a rake and a mower lived in there. "Ma'am, do you have county survey documentation?" Collins asked. "Or just your internal map?" And Linda gave him the line that tells you everything. "I'm the president. We don't need the county to maintain order." "Right," Ortega said, quiet. "But we do." I brought the folder to the porch deed survey. Zoning letter for recreational use, email chain with timestamps and the clerk's initials. They read their posture. Softened, Collins nodded. "Everything appears in order. Mr. Harper, you're on your property." And Linda's smile cracked down the middle before she pasted it back on. "This isn't over. Emergency HOA meeting tomorrow night, full board." I wish I could tell you. I laughed it off, but I carried a hot knot under my ribs all day. The kind that makes your shoulders rise toward your ears. Not because she hated my stain, but because she was so sure authority could bend facts if she said them hard enough. I called my attorney. Marina Russo. Steady. Not flashy, sent the files. She texted back, "You're clean." Jurisdiction stops at their map. Don't swing first, and I called Joanna again to make sure the records would be at hand. If this turned into theater, my neighbor Hank Doyle rolled up with a six-pack and a nod. "Need me there?" he asked. "Not to fight," I said. "Just to sit where she can see you." The meeting looked like a courtroom that lost its robe. Folding tables, plastic nameplates, a borrowed gavel. Linda in the center with Arthur Blaine on one side, retired banker who loves the word order, and Megan Chu on the other, secretary who writes everything. Like it might someday matter which it will. People whispering trespass and cops and dock. The gavel popped the air, and Linda launched. Repeated violations. Threaten our community's standards. 5 minutes of standards without a single county document. And then a hand from the second row. Denise Porter. Voice calm, like a nurse. "Isn't his cabin outside our jurisdiction on the recorded map? Did anyone check with the county before we escalate?" Linda's jaw flexed. "We have our own maps, and Tommy Gallagher, the accountant who's kept half these houses afloat, slid off his glasses. What's our liability if we file on wrong facts because our insurer will ask the room tilted?" At that word, liability, I stood. I brought my deed and survey and the county emails. "We can all look right now." Marina laid the county map down like a card that ends a hand. Linda didn't even glance. "We don't need outside interference. Property lines are a community matter." Marina's eyes smiled the way a mechanic smiles when he hears a rattle and knows exactly which bolt you skipped. So we went to the county the next morning. Sunlight on old tile. Fluorescent hum, Joanna opened a thick file with tabs and set a map covered in numbers. Not opinions on the desk. "Parcel 12047B, she said. "Fingertip on my lot, owner of record. Cole Harper boundaries verified by survey. HOA encumbrance, recreational use complies with zoning." If I could have bottled the relief and poured it into that meeting hall. I would have. But Linda didn't come. Her attorney did a pleasant voice named Alan Brooks. "Even if ownership is clear, unauthorized commercial activity changes the calculus. If he's running any operation that affects community character, we'll pursue. We're prepared to file, and why?" Joanna cleared her throat. "Since you've raised use, I'll note for the record some usage agreements can shift oversight in corner cases." Alan perked up. "What kind of agreements?" "Properly filed, compliant," she said. And looked at me. I gave a single nod, and we left it there because timing matters. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived with paper heavy enough to double as cutting board. Enjoined cease penalties. They accused me of unauthorized commercial activity and interference with governance. Marina set it down like a hot pan. They don't know what they just chose to pick up. And that evening, Collins knocked on my door in a ball cap. Not on duty. Careful posture. "I'm not here, officially," he said. "But if litigation interferes with state police operations, the department will escalate. There are provisions. It stops being neighbor drama." "Understood," I said. "I've tried to keep this simple," and he nodded like a man who's seen what happens when simple gets ignored. The neighborhood split along an old seam, people who like rules versus people who like facts. Megan called me whispering from her car. She didn't take a board vote to hire Alan. She's billing a discretionary line. I don't think we have authority. Denise started highlighting the charter. Tommy called the insurance rep, who said the phrase that makes board sit up straight, uncovered exposure, and still Linda circled Friday in red and promised a decisive announcement. Friday night felt like a football game without a field buzzing before the gavel, Alan, with a stack of impressive-looking documents. Arthur practicing a speech about order, Megan looking down at her notebook like it might shield her Hank in the last row. Arms crossed, Linda hit the gavel and grinned. Today, our counsel filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Harper for unauthorized commercial activities, violations of policy, and interference with legitimate HOA authority. We will not be intimidated by technicalities. And half the room clapped, while the other half stared like they had just watched someone drive into a puddle that wasn't a puddle. I stood no performance, just one clear plastic sleeve in my hand. All week I've heard I'm hiding something. So let's stop guessing for 3 years. A portion of my property has been leased to the state police as a regional outpost and emergency staging site. The lease is recorded with the county. It includes a non-interference clause. It is legal and current that you called the police to my dock to accuse me of trespassing on land where they keep equipment under a lease. You just filed a lawsuit against, yeah, that happened. The sound that followed wasn't a gasp. It was the exact moment a story breaks in half. People reaching for the old version and finding air. Anyone can print letterhead, Linda said. Brittle, I want independent verification. Marina turned to the gray cardigan in row 3. Clerk Pierce, would you read the file numbers into the record? Joanna checked seals and registry numbers and spoke clean into the mic. Megan slid over instrument 19. 2437, a renewed 22-531B, active in force. She set the sleeve down and folded her hands like a teacher. After an answer, Marina leaned to the mic. Madam President, your filing targets an operational law enforcement facility. Withdraw tonight. Alan went pale. Tried to say, modify. Tried to say, path. While Linda clung to the one plank. Left community. Standards. Still matter. Which is true, and also not the point. When the law is the law. Megan stood with her paper hands shaking slightly. Per minutes and emails. President Carmichael incurred legal expenses without a board vote, issued fines without due process, and misrepresented jurisdiction to residents. Our charter requires board approval for litigation. We do not have that on file. Denise rose. I moved to suspend President Carmichael pending audit and to withdraw the filing immediately. Tommy didn't even stand second, and notify the insurer tonight. Linda reached for the gavel, like a person reaching for a railing after the stair gives way. Hands went up on both sides of the aisle. Not everyone, but enough. Megan counted aloud in 2-3, 19, 20, 21. Motion carries, she said, and the room exhaled like swimmers hitting air. The gavel didn't bang. It lowered soft and final, the sound of authority giving itself back. I didn't cheer. I didn't grandstand. I walked to my truck and sat. Felt one weight lift and another settle. Fear sliding off, that they'd grind me down and call it order, and responsibility sliding on, that cracks don't seal themselves just because you win an argument next morning before dawn. I carried my coffee to the dock. The outbuilding glowed small and official behind me. A loon called from across the cove. I cast into the dark, and listened to the whisper of the line, and thought about the courage it takes to raise your hand in a room that rewards certainty over truth. About boring words like liability that quietly save neighborhoods, about how easy it is to become cruel when you are wrong and can't admit it. Here's where the debate starts, and I wanted to. Was I wrong to lease part of my land to the state police without looping in an HOA that loves being looped in, even when it has no jurisdiction? Do badges feel different when they're invited? Is a community's soul protected by rules or by accuracy? Did Linda go off the rails, or did the system teach her to press until something breaks? And what would you have done with a binder in your face and pins in the ground? Tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city. Then, tell me where you draw the line between community and control. Argue with me, push back, or share the time you got. Called a problem for protecting what was already yours. And if this felt honest, hit subscribe so I can bring you the next one. Not all my stories end with a gavel. Some end with a map, a pin, and a person finally reading what was in front of them all along.